listen, I'm testing this out. Chances are it's going to sound terrible because I'm driving, but I really think there should be a podcast. I'm sure there is. That's recorded while people are driving. It's like the best time to talk, you know. Anyways, it is August 27th. I'm driving past the driving past the cow farm right now in Massachusetts. It is 2019. There is a stone wall to my left, and it looks like Sleepy Hollow or something around here. This is it's like Halloween Town. I think Massachusetts is the best place to have Halloween. It's kind of creepy. It's kind of rural. It's kind of dark and sketchy in certain places, and it's beautiful elsewhere. There's a lot of old houses that look like there were possibly murders in them. There's a lot of stacks of wood in people's driveways, and the visibility's not so good. I'm on a road called Route 9. It's a pretty well-known road. Excuse me, I am drinking coffee as well. I'm on my way to work, and it is 6:41 in the morning. Once again, I'm running late. But, yeah, I mean, just trying to describe what's happening around me. There's a lake to my right now that I didn't know existed until just now, and I've been driving past this lake probably every day for the past 2 years. But yeah, I'm on Route 9 in western Massachusetts. Route 9 will lead you all the way up to central Massachusetts. Probably take you to Boston. I don't know much about roads, even though I should, because this is the only state that I've ever lived in, is Massachusetts. I have lived in Connecticut briefly, but this is really the only state I've truly ever lived in. And you know what else I'm noticing? Maybe it's because I'm never up this early in the morning. I just drove past a fucking, bayou on my right-hand side. I think it looked a lot like a bayou. So, it could be that I said something about murders and my eyes are now open to anything suspect. But I think I just passed a Louisiana bayou here in Spencer, Massachusetts. Yeah, I'm just trying to describe my surroundings. I just drove past something called the Rock House Reservation. Yeah, they call it that because the first thing you'll notice, it's just like a trail. You can park your car. It's like a pull-off off the side of the road. And there's a trail that loops around this pond. It's not even really a lake. It's like a pond. And, yeah, it's nice. It's like a decent hike. But the first thing you'll notice as you're walking in and you go up this trail is this massive rock formation that looks like it would be great shelter or something. It looks like it was man-made somehow, you know. It looks too conveniently placed together, but they're massive, huge rocks. Big enough that you could kind of practice climbing if you're into climbing or whatever. And they call it Rock House Reservation, and the history behind it is that Native Americans used to use that as a shelter or a meeting place or something. They're very vague about the description. There's a plaque as you're walking in trying to describe what goes on there or the history of the place. And it says what's slipping my mind? What do they call it? The Wampanoag tribe used to use these rocks as shelter, as their homes or the meeting place, maybe the center of town, because there's several different rock formations that look like they'd make great shelters, and then there's this one central one that's huge, the main feature of the place, you know. But what they fail to the thing that they leave out is what the plaque really should say is Native Americans once gathered here and found these rock formations and made use of them, and then a bunch of like sick white people pulled up in a boat and sneak slaughtered them, and now it's a hiking trail for you rich white people. Yeah, that's what it should say. Maybe I should go around rewriting history. Not that I'm any sort of an expert, but I was fascinated with Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. I think it sounds more accurate. It just makes more sense than all of the history books that we've been handed as kids, my generation anyway. Because I think when you're a kid, one of the most important things when you're taking history to remember, especially as you get a little bit older and into high school and college, is your history class is probably the number one course that you can take that will be influenced by the professor or the teacher who's teaching it. Because everybody has their take on what happened. Everybody has their perspective on history. If you're liberal and you're sort of like hippie-ish, then you're going to tell your version of history, which sometimes will shit on America, which is legit. Like, we did a lot of horrible things, but that could be your basic angle for the course. When you're learning, when there's someone who's, got gripes with United States and really, is angry, then you're going to get that kind of course. If you have someone who's like an ex-veteran and someone who's like very patriotic, then you're gonna get a different history course altogether. And I think that's universally true for the United States anyway. We have a very brief history compared to the rest of the world, and it's been botched throughout the years. Our history. I knew nothing until I got to college. I didn't know anything about the horrors of the slave trade and just how fundamental slavery was to the building of this country. Not only that, how brutal it was. Like, I wasn't aware. I knew, and I did read some books of my own when I was in high school. I went through these periods where I got obsessed with like skateboarding or Louis Farrakhan, different things like that. And I did have a Malcolm X phase I went through around the time that the Malcolm X biopic came out with Denzel Washington. I went through a phase for sure. I read 2 books. The first one was called By Any Means Necessary. That's the first book I read by Malcolm X, and it was fucking phenomenal. Like, it was a book that I just thoroughly enjoyed. I thought he was a great writer, and I really enjoyed reading it. But it made me very, it made me kind of like ashamed to be white, I was obsessed with culture as a kid, and the culture that caught my eye the most, that seemed the most interesting, was, the rising popularity of black culture in the United States, in hip-hop, and, the early 90s was very, like an Afrocentric kind of vibe when it came to hip-hop, some of it, and, I grew up in a town with not a lot of black people, and I became friends with a kid named Eris, and he was like one of a handful of black kids in our school. And I remember going to his house, and his dad had just a huge library of books. His father was like this very smart guy. He worked at Mount Holyoke College as a professor. He was just a very intelligent man. and they had a lot of books at their house. And I think I borrowed one that was just this big book. I think it was like I think it was called like African American History or something. It was just too much for me to read. I did thumb through it, but anywho, yeah, this is supposed to be. I'm just on a rant because I guess I'm afraid of dead air time, even though nobody's listening. I think the fear when you start recording these is long silence, like long pauses, because people will be like, you know, what's going on with my phone, or just shut it off. So I am aware that nobody listens. This is just a yap session, but I guess the point is I do enjoy podcasting, and I had a story to tell when I do have a story to tell in regards to Rachel and the struggle that we went through and she went through, and together we went through. I lost her to cancer. I call her my wife, and it's becoming like this point of contention for people that just really might make me slap someone, but I do call her my wife, man. We were together for 13 years. We were engaged for over a year and a half, 2 years even. And our wedding kept getting put off because she got sick and she passed away from cancer. But anyways, I have a podcast, obviously. I do have a podcast called Ray's World, a hero's story. And I think I have about 26 episodes on there where I detail and go through this story. I had a story to tell after she died. I had this very unique perspective on everything and spent a lot of time with her, and I feel like I'm the only one who really can tell the full story in all its detail. I think I have her perspective. I'm the most qualified to give her perspective of what went down. I'm sure it's not accurate 100%, not even close, but it's just my I had to tell that story. Do I feel like I'm done telling that story? I don't know. I'd like to continue to tell it to different audiences, but anyways, the point is, I do enjoy podcasting. I think it's fun. I think I enjoy listening to podcasts, so I want to continue, but I'm almost out of breath when it comes to Rachel's story. I have told it. I have gotten it off my chest. There were some things that happened that were extremely profound, and I've detailed those things. And they make me very emotional just to talk about them, and there's only so much that you can. She had a whole life, so I can continue that podcast, but the point is, I'm trying to. I would like to just have a daily podcast about the funny shit that happens in my life every day, in our lives, in the kitchen. There's some chef podcasts, like, there's a couple out there with either, like, very serious podcasts about food culture in the world today, or what's going on in the Michelin world. There's a couple podcasts like that with some serious chefs and everything. And then there's a couple podcasts with some, like, bearded chef with a fucking, hand-stitched aprons and whatnot, who they take things a little bit seriously, but they also think they're funny and stuff, and, like, the hipster angle. But there's no blue-collar angle. There's no, like, dude who just works in the kitchen and fucking hates it and loves it at the same time. And, my story's pretty unique when it comes to the kitchen. I have dodged, at this point, I should be running the show somewhere, but I've dodged that position in so many ways, and flagrantly dodged that position, because I really hate working in the kitchen. I really hate it, but it's really hard to get out of. And now I work for a college, and it's a state job, so it is what it is. There are things I enjoy about it, but the things I enjoy about it are the downright fucking just classic